Hello, Om Shanti, and a very warm welcome to today's next chapter in our journey exploring the different topics that relate to purity. Warm welcome from me, Philippa Blackham. And I know you've had a session with Judy on Raksha Bandhan and the meaning of this pure connection of protection. But today we're going to be expanding and exploring that theme. And we have a wonderful guide for this session, who is Sister Judy Rodgers, who I'm sure is very well known to all of you. But in case anyone is watching who doesn't know her, let me just give you a little brief introduction. Judy worked in the media for many years in different media companies, both small and also large, such as CBS, Fox Video, and New World Entertainment. She then increasingly turned her attention to her search for a spiritual path, a search for truth. And that search led her to a very profound meeting with Daddy Janki, who was one of our leaders and heads at the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University. Sister Judy helped with a team that launched and then supported the Call of Time dialogues, which was a large international initiative bringing fairly top-level people together for meaningful spiritual conversations. And that has been going on for the past 20 years. And so Judy had many opportunities to be with Daddy Janki, who was the original inceptor of this program. And Judy considers herself very fortunate to have been able to spend so much time with Daddy Janki in all corners of the world, but of course in India as well. For the past 16 years, Judy's been living in Peace Village, which is the Brahma Kumaris retreat center in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. And she lives about half an hour away from her son and his family. And she also has a daughter. So Judy very much is an example of someone who's been able to combine being on the spiritual path with the reality of having a family, albeit a grown-up family. And we're going to be discussing how those needs change and evolve over time. So Judy, a really warm welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Philippa. That was a great introduction. Nice job.
Good. So I mentioned there Sudesh did his talk on Raksha Bandhan, and of course we're in this month of August, which always means tying one of these little Rakhis, which we all have on our wrist, which is the sacred thread. But what for you is the significance of Raksha Bandhan in terms of this bond, this eternal link that we have with the divine source, and the impact that connection has on the soul? How do you relate to that?
Mm-hmm. You know, everyone loves Rakhi. In fact, my first meeting with Daddy Janki was when she tied the Rakhi on my wrist. So I consider my spiritual birthday to be around the time of Rakhi. You know, Rakhi works at many levels. At the most basic level, it's about physical purity. Right, it's about abstaining from physical, those kinds of physical connections, remaining pure on that level. But the longer that you are on a spiritual path, the more you experience that purity is sort of the most elevated inner state. And that, being a vegetarian and not drinking alcohol and all those things are part of it. But that really it's about a quality of cleanliness in the mind and heart that is way beyond what the world even thinks is possible. We're guided to make sure that not only do we not have evil thoughts, but that we don't even waste any thoughts. That every thought that comes to the mind, every feeling that lives in the heart, even our dreams, are pure. So when we tie a Rakhi, we're basically not just agreeing to the more mundane aspects of purity, but we're committing ourselves to keep such a level of goodwill for the world, such a level of real good wishes and hopes for others that we don't ever fall into sort of negative things or wasteful things in our lives.
I don't know about you, but I kind of see purity as the vehicle through which we can engage in that relationship with the divine, because God speaks the language of purity. God is the most pure being in all of existence. And we have to get onto that vibration, onto that frequency in order to tune in and really fully experience those qualities for ourselves. And I often feel that it's this union with the divine which is what gives the soul bliss. And it's a feeling of separation from the divine that gives us unhappiness and sorrow, because we're craving that feeling of connection and union. And of course, what human souls do when they can't experience the bliss of that divine union is they start looking for human relationships to give them that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, many times you can get a variation of that feeling, albeit only temporary sometimes. But other times our efforts to find a replacement for that love bond brings us to a place where we enter into relationships that become one of bondage, relationships that aren't supporting us. Could you say a few words about our human relationships, our human experience of love and bonding, and from your side, how that compares to the bond, the love that we experience with the divine?
Mm-hmm. That was lovely. Your explanation was really lovely. Yeah, that's exactly the point. How do we become light enough, pure enough that we can sustain that connection? And what do we turn to when we can't? You know, Raj Yoga is completely different from devotional paths. In a devotional path, we were thinking of ourselves as personalities, bodies, calling out to God, who we were pretty sure we'd never know. We were pretty sure that this one was just sometimes just an idea, right? I think people just weren't sure what they were even asking for. So and in Raj Yoga, the whole point is to become soul conscious, right? To be in the awareness that I am this pure, conscient light being and make the connection from there. That connection is completely different from the connection we make with people as bodies and personalities. So I think every soul has the memory of that. Every soul has the memory of being close to God as a soul, but the memory is so faint that they've got the yearning for it, but no idea how to get there. So in that yearning, they attempt to find something to give them that feeling of connection. And you're right, it's through human relationships that we try to find that. I think the purest of those is probably the parent and the baby. You know, I think the parent's pure, unadulterated love for a baby and the desire to be a good parent and to help this child is probably the purest experience of love, absent the soul with God. But what happens to us in that relationship is we go from wanting to just give to the soul and give to the soul to having these expectations for the soul, that they'll behave a certain way, that they'll do certain things, that maybe that they'll respond to our love in certain ways. And this happens in all other relationships as well. So if I am my siblings, my parents, my friends at work, my friends through life, we do have good love for them, and we do give to them, and we do see beauty in them. And there's lots to love in those relationships, but ultimately, almost without exception, we want something from them. It's very subtle. We may just want them to appreciate what we did. We may just want them to acknowledge who we are in a different way. We may want them to reciprocate. You know, I picked up your children, please pick up my children. I, took care of the family vacation this year, you take care of it next year. You know, these are we're kind of negotiating with these various people in our connection. And when they don't do what we're wanting them to do, hoping that they'll do, we become disappointed. That disappointment creates sorrow in the relationship. And then inevitably, it creates discord. You know, I remember once Dottie Janke talking to someone at Call of the Time, actually someone from the UK, a close contact of the BKs, and he was saying, you know, this is, it's hard for me to come. My family didn't support me. They didn't want me to leave. In fact, they don't even support my spiritual life. And I think he was hoping for a little sympathy from Dottie. And Dottie said, let me explain to you the difference between karma bandhan and karma sampan, karmic relationship and karmic bondage. She said, in a karmic relationship, there is a connection. You feel familiarity, you feel closeness, you feel recognition. I've known this soul, there's closeness. She said, but there's not really discord. There's not really a push-pull. Whereas in a karmic bondage, there are expectations, and the expectations bring you sorrow. And every time you try to make the other one happy, they don't become happy. No matter what you do, they become unhappy. And when one of you tries to leave, there's sorrow by the other one. So it's this push-pull. And we all know, we all have relationships like that, you know, but it's not all our relationships. We can have friendships and love relationships with other human beings that are just karmic relationships. But the bondage part of it is where the sorrow comes in. The bondage part is where I want something from you. Even just acknowledgement, even just appreciation. So when we're dealing with how to address them, that's the place we have to go, is to what is it that I'm doing that's sustaining this, right? What's my part in this? And then we can make the effort to end the karmic bondage. But first, I've got to see that I'm participating. And that's what this man that Dottie was talking with, he really felt that he was being wronged, right? That they were doing something to him. But her point was, no, you were participating in this. And she was trying to get him to see how. And that's the trick sometimes, to see how I'm participating.
It's almost like being on the other end of a seesaw. You know, you can't say it's the other person on the other end of the seesaw that's making it go up and down, because you're also part of making it go up and down. Right. What you can do is choose to get off the seesaw. But it's true what you're saying, that in our relationships, in a way, the way the world approaches relationships is opposite from how we approach them, because the world is looking to find that one special person, create that one special child, that one special family that's going to make them feel needed, loved, is going to see them for who they are. And in a way, the world is looking to create these ties because it gives their life meaning and purpose. It gives you a sense of place in this crazy, chaotic world. So it does make sense why people want that. And yet on the spiritual path, we're saying we don't want any one relationship to be pulling us in a certain direction. We come into relationship, but from a place of freedom and detachment. And spiritual paths have approached this in different ways. There's a whole tradition called sannyas, where they deal with this problem of the cloying relationships by saying, do you know what? We're just going to renounce the whole lot. We're going to walk off into the jungle, into the forest, not have anything to do with them anymore. And we're going to seek isolation and the life of a recluse. And that's one way of dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
But here in Raj Yoga, we are presented with the challenge, if you like, of staying in your family connections and relationships, but living a life like a lotus flower. In other words, you're detached, you're slightly above the muddy water, and yet your stem and your roots are very firmly anchored in the mud down below. What in your experience have you done that has enabled you to walk this middle path of not rejecting, not turning away, not pushing people away, not making them feel like they're not important or they don't matter, and yet at the same time not allowing them to pull on your heartstrings and keep you running around them because you feel actually it's your job to do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in a lot of ways, the sannyas path is much easier. You know, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm just going to clear everything out of my refrigerator. And even if my family eats it, too bad, because I'm on a diet, so I'm throwing it out. It's a lot easier to just not be with it, but we don't believe that that's really the task of this time. The task of this time is to become powerful, right? To become spiritually powerful. The reason that Dottie was explaining to this man that he was participating was she was trying to get him to see that ending a karmic bondage has to start with me. So we get needy in a relationship because we're a little bit empty, right? I mean, I need your acknowledgement because I'm not completely convinced of my own goodness or my own worth. I need you to do these favors for me because I don't really think it's fair for me to do them all, right? I mean, we've got these notions about how we're completed in our transactions with others. That's sort of the secular notion of love, even. You know, you do this and I'll do this, and we'll have these separate roles and kind of pay each other back and try to stay on an equal basis. But with Raj Yoga, the understanding is that my job is to make myself as full and complete as I can be. So I don't get my peace from you. I want you to be peaceful. I'm happy if you're peaceful, but I don't get my peace from you. I draw my peace from the source of peace, from the ocean of peace, from my spiritual parent, from the divine. With that, I'm filled up with peace. And now in relationship, I have to donate peace because it's spilling out of me, right? I'm so full of peace that it's just spilling out of me, and I am donating peace to the relationship. Same with love, right? We tend to create these contractual approaches to love, especially parents and children, especially as they age. I took care of you when you were young. Now you're going to take care of me. There is this understanding. And I'm not saying we shouldn't care for our parents, but when it's a transactional consciousness, I have to do this because you did this for me. That's the bondage. If I'm in the consciousness that I have filled myself with love, I am full with love. I've gotten the love from the divine. I feel at peace with my own self-love. Now I'm giving from all of that overflow to my parent and to everyone. I see that you need help. Let me come through for you. Let me help you. Let me help you land in a place where you're going to be comfortable. Let me be available to you. If I bring my aging parents chicken soup or whatever soup I make in my life, vegetable soup, and I bring it to them, and they take it, but they don't say thank you. You know, that can be a crisis for someone. But if I gave it out of overflow, right? If I gave it from my love and my generosity, then I don't care if they say thank you. If they say thank you, that's lovely, but it's not the payback for the thing that I did, right? So this difference is that my work, my spiritual work, is to connect with the divine and become full of these qualities so that I'm not looking for them in the world. Then my relationships aren't tainted with need and wanting, and instead they are coming from generosity. I'm bestowing, I'm giving, all of that.
Very interesting. In a way, an outside observer looking at a situation wouldn't perhaps be able to tell the difference between someone who's giving help and support and love from a place of absolute detachment and one who's giving it from a place of feeling the burden of needing to give the return. The action is the same. It's the intention, the feeling on the part of the doer that is different. But you mentioned their contracts, and I think that's an interesting idea, because it is almost as if we feel this subtle thread of a connection with someone, that at some unspoken level we have entered into an eternal sacred contract with them. And when we get married, it's in the eyes of God, and we call it the bond of holy matrimony. Or we make a commitment to bring a child into the world, and you've created them and you've sustained and nurtured them. It can feel as if that relationship does have a valid bond that comes with it that cannot be broken.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if you in your life have done any kind of ritual around finishing those contracts, releasing them, purifying them, transforming them. How do we get past that feeling of, I hear what you're saying, but the truth is I do owe them. I am obliged. I am in bondage to that relationship.
Well, I think there's a difference between feeling that I am obliged or feeling that I'm in bondage and feeling that I have such pure love for the soul that I want them to thrive and flourish. I want their happiness. I want their independence. I want their peace. I want them to be really in as elevated and beautiful a place as possible. So in the former, it's got the burden that Dottie was talking about with that person. You kind of owe me this. I need to get away, and I've done such and such for you. Now you got to let me go, right? That kind of owing. Whereas if I'm full, if my own spiritual practice has gotten me to a place where I'm feeling full of these things, then I look at this one who wants something from me and I'm thinking, okay, what can I do here to support you? And if they are unsatisfiable, and this is where it gets into trouble, because if only one of you is making spiritual effort and the other one isn't, and the other one is never going to be satisfied, because they want you to either be there all the time or, they have a request of you that satisfies them and that won't change, then you have to shift to a posture of what Dottie calls bhavana. So if I have good wishes for the soul and I've done everything that I reasonably could do, I've supported them in my heart, in my mind, with my activities out of love, not out of need, not with no resentment. I've just supported them from love. Then I say to them, I have such good wishes for you. May this be a great week for you. And I've made a commitment to go to this spiritual gathering, or I've made a commitment to be at this place. And so I'll check in with you during the week, make sure everything's good here, and I'll see you in a week. In other words, you leave with good wishes in your heart. The place we get in trouble is when we get defiant. Well, I'm going anyway. I've done everything you need to do. There's nothing reasonable you're asking of me. I'm going. And I've got resentment in my heart. That, every thought we have creates a vibrational field. So if I've got resentment in my heart, then there's a sea of resentment between us. Right? Whereas if I have in my heart only good wishes for you, I see you're a little uncomfortable. I'm so sorry you're feeling that way. And I have really good wishes. I know it's going to be a nice week for you, and I'll be in touch. And then you leave with real love and peace in your heart, and you do what you need to do. So you're right. The outside observer may not notice the difference. It depends on how astute they are. But you know the difference because you're not suffering, right? People in bondage suffer. They take real sorrow. They feel very unhappy that this one is pulling on me or making unreasonable requests. Whereas if I am in this state where I'm full and I've given to you from love, then I'm not suffering.
I think the critical thing there is that you're in a state where you feel full, and you feel safe and you feel secure. Because it's like there's no hook in you that they can grab hold of to pull you back.
Right.
It's when you're not 100% clear or committed, and part of you feels maybe you shouldn't be doing this because it's going to make things inconvenient for other people, that they will find a one way or another to pull you back and prevent you from doing what you need to do. So my job is to make sure I have done my inner work and unhooked myself from them, so that I'm a completely clear channel and I'm getting my nourishment support from this relationship with the divine, and that's giving me the power to be that clear. Right. So maybe what we're saying is the little telltale signs are, one is if you are feeling a sense of expectation of the other person, that you need them to do a certain thing or do it in a certain way. That means that they are fulfilling some kind of need that you have of them, and that's neediness. That's not a life free from bondage. And the other would be that you know, they can, that there's no give and take of sorrow, that if you're taking sorrow from a situation, then that means that there's something in you that is invested in that, and it's affecting you.
There's something else that I see a lot with both men and women. I may see it a little more with men, but I see it with both. And that is, if my concept of myself is I'm the responsible one, I am the caretaker here, I'm the one who makes sure everybody's okay, and that's my identity, then I actually become in bondage to that identity. I actually, on a subtle level, want you to need my help. I want you a little bit to, I'm not intentionally wanting you to be weak, but actually I'm kind of pleased when you come to me and say you need help. Then I think, well, of course, I'm the one who can give you a ride. I'm the one who can, pay your rent. I'm the one who can help you with your difficult relationships. I'm the one who can take you to the doctor, because it reinforces something in me about my identity. It's quite different if I shift from I am that big caretaker to I am one who loves you, and I'm happy to, out of that love, share with you in whatever ways can support. But if my real hope for you is your independence, that you're able to be under your own power, that you're able to make good choices and keep yourself going. And if I see you continue to make bad choices and you continue to need help, then I've got to think about what's the difference between supporting from the right place, supporting your strength, and creating this unhealthy bondage. I think that's where it gets complex.
It seems like a really, fruitful, live, spiritual edge to be working with, to find this balance between loving and detached. And I wonder what you have observed as being the difference between individuals on a spiritual path who are having to navigate this and having to constantly redefine where their boundaries are and their sense of separation and their connection with the divine, compared with those who, for whatever good karma, are living a life where there's just simply no one out there who's pulling on them at all. All they have is the bondage of their own body and their own mind to deal with. Do you think, in a way, that there's some fantastic life lessons that can come from having to walk this middle path, as opposed to just not encountering it at all?
Well, even those who don't have family, I find, end up having to face a lesson somehow. It's the 18th chapter of the Gita, right? This Nashta Moha, this conquer of attachment. So attachment, bondage has everything to do with attachment. I think everyone's life path offers them the lessons they need. That's the beauty of karma, right? Is that you look at someone else's life and you think, gosh, I wouldn't want that one. I'll do mine, I'll do my track, I'll do my lessons, even the hard ones, because I see that in many ways it's bringing me clarity, and it's bringing me the ability to move up a bit and have a different vantage point on things. I think we learn through, when you ask someone, what point in your life really was a turning point for you? What really set you in a better direction? They never talk about the day at the beach, right? They always talk about the year they got sick, the year that their spouse got sick, the year that something really difficult happened financially or physically or legally or whatever, how they worked through it. That's always the answer. I've never heard anyone say the year I got to do the cruise. So even though we don't want those things, those are the things that cause us to sit back and say, okay, what am I missing here? What do I need to do to set this right? What do I need to do to take the vexation out of it, to take the discomfort out of it? And discomfort, maybe I want to be careful with that word, because sometimes it's uncomfortable to work your way through this, right? It's not always a walk in the park. And especially if you've got someone in your life who is struggling, who's got a lot of bad things going on. And when that happens, you have to, each moment you're re-asking yourself, what do they need from me? What can I donate that's going to lift things up? And what can they actually do themselves? And not go into this automatic pilot about, well, let me keep things going. I've always been the one to come through for them. Let me come through for them now, which is what I was talking about before. A lot of us have a subtle identity of being one who takes care of things, especially if you're the oldest sibling, you're the one who, took care of your household when you were growing up. That's especially likely. So I think we just have to be really aware of what is motivating us. We have to really check inside and say, am I coming from a place of fullness and strength and love for myself and love for the other one, real love, where I want their freedom for them. I want them strong. And so that I don't make offers that end up creating obligations.
Mm-hmm. I like that idea that you can think you're walking away from all these ties and obligations, but they will find a way of finding you until you have worked through them and become really free. What has your own personal journey been? Because I mentioned that you've lived for 16 years in this retreat center, which is geared up for, being immersed in the spiritual realm, and yet you are also a mother. You have 2 grown-up children that have their families. How in reality do you have this dance going on between, on the one hand, being this yogi living in this beautiful whitewashed building away from the world, and yet at the same time you've got to roll your sleeves up sometimes and be there for them? How have you done that?
Well, I think I would say, how am I doing that? Because I would never say I've got it mastered. But I think at the core of it has to be a deep respect for each soul's journey. Regardless of what choice I've made, my grandchildren are not interested in a spiritual life. They're respectful. When they come here, they're certainly respectful, but it's not their choice. It's not on their script, so to speak. So I try to be with them in such a way that I have a lot of respect for the choice they make and the script they have. Each of them has their own challenges, of course, right? There's no one in the world who does not have a set of challenges. So I try to look at them, seeing what they're up against, and seeing what they're able to bring to it. I try not to give much advice, honestly. I mean, I do a lot more listening than advice giving. I may ask a question, when you did this, did it help? Or what are you hoping to get out of this? Or was there anything else you might have done when you got to that point that you might do next time? I mean, I might ask some questions, but I don't really give advice very often. I very occasionally I do, but not so often. Because I feel like, every soul at this point is getting experiences that allow them to gain the understanding that lifts them out of difficulty a bit. And if they don't get the understanding and they continue to repeat the mistakes, they continue to get the karmic return of that. And you see souls in that connection close to you. You see them continuing to make, poor choices, or continue to not understand, continue to try to fulfill themselves in really limited ways. And, honestly, is my lecture gonna change the trajectory? My little pep talk about, especially given the choices I've made, I mean, my credibility with someone like that's going to be pretty low. So I just try to be really patient. I do try to be a soft place to land. So when the inevitable happens and they find themselves in a difficult place again, let me make you dinner. Would you like to go for a walk? Let's just spend a little time together. But I don't try to fix it. To as much as possible, I try not to fix it or to advise on it. I just try to be a bit of a companion, because it's everyone's road is their own. And sometimes they're just lonely. They just want good company, and we can provide that.
And to what extent, when one of your close family is going through a really difficult time, something has happened and they're in deep distress, to what extent are you feeling suffering with them, or are you the observer of their suffering?
I would say that sometimes I am suffering with them when there's attachment there, which there sometimes is, and especially if it's a big setback for them. I feel their pain in my heart. But when I do, I immediately do more yoga. I immediately, put myself in a setting where I do more spiritual reading. I spend more time in yoga, because I know that actually I can't help them from that place. If I'm sitting there with a stone in my heart and big sorrow for them, that's what they'll get from me, the big sorrow. And they don't need that. They've already got buckets of sorrow. So what I do immediately is I say, okay, let me be with Baba. The other thing I say is, all souls belong to the divine. Even those who came through us, they really aren't ours. We're the trustee for these ones. And as you said at the beginning when we started talking, once we understand who the source is, who the whatever you call them, the divine, the one above, the great light, whatever everyone understands them to be, you realize that all souls belong to that one, and that in every soul's memory track, that relationship is there, even if they disavow it, even if they're hardcore scientists, even if they claim to be atheists, somewhere in the memory track is the memory of that connection. And so the mistake we make is thinking, well, it's my daughter, it's my son, this is my whatever, which causes us to intervene and actually interrupt their effort to get to the right source. So it's actually an act of disrespect to say, I need to be the one here to intervene, because they won't make it without me, even if it looks dire. Because if I intervene, then they create their connection with me, and they don't do that extra search for what is the true source here. I think we also have to have the ability to watch somebody really crash. And that's very hard. It's very, very, very hard. And I guess you have to define what crash means, but to watch someone really take a big tumble, and to watch them not in horror, not with pity, but with this sense of regard that this is someone who has to learn the hard way, as they say in the secular world, right? Some souls really have to run up against real obstacles in order to go inside and really see what the truth is. So I don't think saving someone who's in distress, as much as some part of us feels we could do that. You know, I know the answer. I have the experience. Let me come in and guide this one out of this wreck that they're in. But actually, when I do that, I probably delay their ability to find the real way out.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, Judy. Thank you so much. We have got a few questions, which I'll try and weave into our conversation. There's one question here around the sense of responsibility and attachment when someone is experiencing sorrow as a result of what you feel has been caused by you. Say there's been a relationship breakup and the child is really not in a good place. You feel that pull to fix it, to make it right. Is that appropriate, a response to that situation? Or do you sometimes need to feel, look, this was just something that was destined to happen. It wasn't necessarily my responsibility. And this soul has chosen to come into this situation. I don't have to feel responsible for them. What about the bond of responsibility in that situation?
Okay. Do you mean that the relationship break was between me and another one?
Yeah.
Or I'm witnessing, between me
so
and
you and a partner, and as a consequence, the child is really suffering.
I see. Okay, sure. Well, I think there are times when a choice we make causes disappointment to another. I think that does happen. And I think acknowledgement is the beginning, to say, you know, I understand that this choice that I made or the situation that's happened has caused you sorrow. That wasn't my intention, and I'm really sorry that you're feeling sad. However, in my life path, I had to take the path, the ground, the high ground as I understood it. And I have the strong feeling that ultimately my being in a healthier place and being happier will benefit you as well. I know that doesn't take away your sorrow now, but I want you to understand that I am aware of what's going on for you. And I have real compassion for what you're feeling.
So that's nice. You're dealing with the situation, you're not denying it, but you're not being drawn into the story in terms of your own emotional response to that situation. You're trusting in the fullness of time, things will find their rightful place.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that. The connection with children you've touched on, and there's a question here around that connection lasting throughout a lifetime. Does it get easier as time goes on, that bond and sense of responsibility?
I don't think
does it just
so.
change?
No, I don't think it gets any easier. And then you've got grandchildren, which if it's possible, that's an even stronger bond in some ways than to children. You know, I think what helps me is to just realize that they are all our children. Every child I meet on the street, you know, I'm in a train or whatever, I look across, there's a little child there, someone's trying to cross the crosswalk. It happened to me this weekend. I looked over and there was this little girl, chocolate colored skin and a big pink bow. And I just immediately, I said, hi. They're all our children, you know, and at this time, they need to all be our children. I think we need to look out at all of them and say they need our love, they need our support, they need our kindness, they need our watchful eye. I think I heard a nice story. I think it was Brother Yogesh who told it, and I don't know where he got it, but when in a state where we're really, really detached, which that's not a nice word in English, but where we're really unattached, where we've got equal love for everyone, we would look over into a park and see many children playing. A couple of them might belong to my family line, might be my grandchildren or my children. But would I have special attention on them, or would I look at the whole group? And in the state we want to be in, we would look at the whole group. Is everybody okay? Is everybody getting love, right? So I think we keep ourselves in that state where, yes, our children have been our responsibility, and we definitely want to make sure that we fulfill whatever, but that actually we're broadening our, what you might call our range of connection to include everyone, all souls.
Okay, well, another question here, which takes us to the other end of the spectrum, and that is parents when they start aging. And there is a feeling that, you know, they have sacrificed their life in order to give me so much. And there is the bondage of giving the return of that. And as their needs get greater, so do I get drawn into more and more care and support. What is the position there of someone on a spiritual path?
Yeah.
Because you can't neglect that, and yet at the same time you can't be immersed in it.
Right, right. I think there is a difference between what we do physically on the outside and what posture we have on the inside. If we are caring for a parent, we're taking food over, we're managing the nurses, whatever, sometimes it gets quite complicated. If that's happening from an inner place of anxiety and turmoil, I'm at war with my siblings about what's happening. I'm resentful because it's taken an enormous amount of time and money. If it's from that place, then actually something's wrong. That's the bondage place. If, on the other hand, I can manage to be in a place where I am able to share again I kept myself full. I'm doing a really strong practice. I'm keeping myself peaceful. I'm keeping myself loving. And even if the family is at war about this situation or there's push-pull, I'm in the place where I'm just coming from love. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel cared for. I want my siblings to know that I have a lot of affection and concern for everybody involved, but I'm not going to get down into the suffering place. I don't need anything out of it. I don't need to be the one who provides a service. I don't need to be the one who wins. I'm really trying to make sure that safety and love and physical well-being is what's happening. So I think, again, as you said earlier, sometimes from the outside it looks one way, but the real test is what's going on inside. If I'm at war in here about this, then I'm definitely in a bondage. But if I'm in a place of love and freedom, no matter how sticky the situation is, actually I'm bringing benefit to it, and it should be okay for me, hopefully for them.
Wonderful. Fantastic. We're going to have some meditation in a moment, and really what has underpinned everything that we have talked about is having this meditation practice which fills you up, which gives you the love, the sense of security and safety that you're looking for, which means you don't need anything from these other people, and really, you know, meditation connection is the critical thing here.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. Well, let us experience a few moments of what that feeling of love, the bondage of love with the divine feels like, and how we can give love to all those that we are in connection with, but from a place of just sending good wishes rather than needing anything from them, or me having any expectations or placing any demands on them. This pure state of being in connection and yet feeling separate from the connection as well. So Judy, if you could lead us in our meditation, that would be beautiful.
Okay, so let's start by putting aside all the words of the last hour, and holding in the heart the pure intention to just be love. Become aware that as the soul, I am love. I am peace. And I am happiness. And the closer I stay to my spiritual parent, to the divine, the more full I become again of peace, love, and happiness. And in this case, maybe especially love. So I experience my heart is filled only with love. I am love. Knowing that from this place, I can only share love. I don't need anything from anyone. I don't need to be acknowledged. I don't need to be complimented. I don't need to be reassured. I sit in that place of complete purity, the lotus seat behind the eyes, filled with love and kindness. And from that place, these currents of love move from my heart, from the soul, out into the body, out beyond the body into the world. Touching every soul I've ever known. And every soul I have yet to meet. No feeling of mine. This one belongs to me and that one doesn't. All souls are my brothers. And I remain in a loving and pure connection with all souls because of my loving connection with the Supreme. Om Shanti.